A single shriek of rubber on wet asphalt shattered the night in Ikoyi, and with it shattered the life of billionaire philanthropist Tunde Adeyemi. The rain-slick street flashed red and white as the family SUV spun, metal shrieking, until the world went silent but for the soft whistle of steam escaping the crumpled hood. In the front seat, Amara, Tunde's radiant wife, the woman whose laughter filled every marble hallway of their mansion, lay motionless, her hands still stretched instinctively toward the back seat. 4-year-old Zara, strapped into her booster, stared at her mother through spiderwebbed glass, wide-eyed but miraculously unhurt. When first responders pulled the child free, she didn't cry or scream, she simply clutched a damp teddy bear to her chest and shut her mouth to the world. Reporters the next morning called it the silence that screamed. For the Adeyemi empire, markets trembled. For Tunde, time stopped. He buried Amara beneath frangipani blossoms overlooking the lagoon, then retreated behind 12-foot gates, locking grief inside and everyone else out. In that sprawling mansion of crystal chandeliers and imported roses, the only sound was the slow ticking of an ornamental grandfather clock, each talk an accusation that the man who had everything had failed at the one thing that mattered. Zara, eyes hollow, sat for hours in a bay window seat staring at the drive where her mother would never again return. Day after day, nannies tried coaxing a word, any word, from her lips. She gave them nothing but silence, clutching the teddy bear until it seems threatened to burst. And somewhere deep inside Tunde, anger welded itself to sorrow, forging a grief so heavy it dragged every curtain closed and smothered every lamp. The Adeyemi mansion, once filled with laughter, forgot how to breathe. 2 years crawled past like wounded dogs. Dust gathered on family portraits, muting every smiling face in sepia haze. Tunde, once photographed at charity galas and innovation summits, now haunted dark corridors in silk pajamas, beard untrimmed, eyes glassy from too many nights whispering apologies to framed photos of Amara. Zara, still wordless, padded barefoot from room to room, thin legs and oversized nightgown giving her the look of a lonely ghost. Staff resigned in waves, unable to endure the oppressive hush that settled like fog across the marble floors. The mansion's grand piano, once Amara's favorite, lost its voice beneath a tarp. Even the koi in the ornamental pond swam sluggishly, as though the silence had reached the water. Psychologists came armed with picture books and bright puppets, they left shaking their heads. Selective mutism rooted in trauma, they wrote, but no prescription could mend a heart that felt safer behind closed lips. Tunde's mother, Grandma Ife, her back still strong though her hair was white, knelt nightly beside her bed, pleading in prayer, God, breathe into this house again. But the house answered only with echoes. One gray morning, Tunde dragged a duvet to Amara's walk-in closet and curled on the cedar floor beside her dresses, inhaling the fading scent of jasmine. And that was the day Grandma Ife decided that enough sorrow had been allowed to poison their bloodline. She closed her prayer book, pulled on her Ankara wrapper, and stepped into the bustling mainland market to search for a remedy no doctor could prescribe, a living soul whose very presence might jar a silent child and broken father back to life. She didn't know what she was looking for, only that she would recognize the spark when she saw it. Market day in Lagos beats like a drum, hawkers shouting, radios blaring Afrobeats, the air thick with pepper and diesel. Grandma Ife wove through the chaos with the sureness of a woman who'd bargained here since girlhood. At a stall stacked with plantains, she noticed a skinny girl with dusty sneakers and a faded yellow hoodie hoisting crates twice her size. Careful, child, the stall owner barked, but the girl only smiled, adjusting the crate so it wouldn't wobble. When a customer shorted him on change, she slipped her own coins onto the counter so he wouldn't lose face. That simple kindness shimmered in the bustle like a dropped pearl. Grandma Ife's gaze followed the girl as she hurried to the next errand, ponytail whipping, sweat shining on her brow. The old woman caught up, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. My name is Ife, she said. You work hard. The girl straightened, eyes wary yet hopeful. Amira, ma. I carry groceries to earn my keep at the orphanage. Her voice carried a humility that felt older than her years. Grandma Ife bought 2 baskets of oranges she didn't need just to hear the girl talk. With each sentence, Myra's eyes flashed warmth. A light that felt like sunrise after too long a night. Do you like children? Ife asked. I love them, Mira answered without thinking. then flushed as though afraid of wanting too much. The old woman smiled. In that moment she knew God had answered in dusty sneakers. "Come," she said, pressing a transport card into Myra's hand. "A child and her father need someone exactly like you. It will be hard, but I promise your courage will matter." Myra stared at the card, then at the woman's steady eyes and nodded, because sometimes destiny sounds less like thunder and more like a grandmother's whisper. The Adeyemi gates yawned open, revealing manicured lawns turned wild from neglect, fountains dry, petals wilting beneath harmattan dust. Myra's lungs tightened. She had never imagined such wealth, nor such visible sorrow. Grandma Ife guided her past marble statues and a foyer big enough to swallow her childhood dormitory. "Remember?" the old woman warned softly. "Amara was the heartbeat here. Her things are sacred. Tund protects his grief like a wounded lion." Afternoon light slanted through stained glass windows, painting fractured rainbows across Myra's face as she stepped into the silence. Somewhere deep in the mansion a door slammed, but no footsteps followed. The staff that remained watched Myra with a mixture of pity and relief, as if throwing her into the pit might spare them another outburst. She was shown a cramped servant's room beside the laundry. Its single window faced a mossy wall, but to Myra it felt palatial compared to the orphanage bunk. She unpacked her few belongings: a frayed storybook, a chipped mug, a scrap of fabric embroidered with the words "Hope keeps moving." That evening she padded into the grand hallway with a dust cloth, determined to earn her keep. The first picture she saw was Amara, smiling, eyes bright, one arm around Zara, the other looped through Tund's. Myra's fingers hovered, then gently brushed the frame, wiping away months of grime. "Don't touch that." The bellow ricocheted off marble. Tund strode from the shadows, grief and fury knotted in his brow. "Who gave you permission?" Myra stammered apology, cheeks burning. Tund's chest heaved. For a heartbeat Myra feared he might smash the portrait himself. Instead he turned, voice a low growl, "Stay away from my wife's things." He disappeared, leaving Myra frozen beneath the hovering chandelier, dust cloth trembling in her hand, aware that she had stepped into a house haunted not by ghosts, but by love that refused to die. At dawn Myra carried a tray of millet porridge to Zara's room. The corridor smelled faintly of lavender and abandonment. Inside, Zara perched on a window seat, teddy bear gripped so tightly its button eye hung by a thread. Myra set the tray on a nearby table, lowered herself to the carpet, and waited. "I'm Myra," she whispered. The child's gaze didn't flicker. Myra lifted a spoonful of porridge, blew on it, tasted it herself to show it was safe. Zara stared through her, beyond her, into some silent memory. Hours trickled by, the porridge cooled to paste. Myra fetched a comb, but Zara flinched. She tried soft high-life music, but Zara pressed palms to ears. That night, alone in her tiny room, Myra curled under a thin blanket and cried. Tears for a little girl trapped behind silence. Tears for a man drowning in memories. Tears for herself because she feared she could not swim in their sorrow without sinking. She found cell service in a corner and called Grandma Ife. "Maybe they need someone stronger," she whispered. The old woman's voice came steady as a drumbeat. "Strength is not always loud, child. Sometimes it is simply staying one more day." Myra hung up but didn't sleep. She lay awake listening to the mansion's slow breathing. The creak of beams, the distant drip of a leaky faucet, the tick-tock accusation of the grandfather clock. In that darkness she made a decision. If silence was Zara's fortress, Myra would camp at the gates with patience until the child peeked out. Even if it broke her heart, she would stay, because somewhere deep inside she knew heartbreak could be welded into something unbreakable. Next evening Myra returned to Zara's room carrying neither porridge nor comb but an old, dog-eared storybook. The Girl Who Found the Moon. She didn't ask permission. She simply opened to the first page, cleared her throat, and began reading aloud. Her voice wobbled but grew steadier with each sentence, filling the corners with gentle rhythms. Zara didn't look at her, yet her grip on the teddy loosened. Myra read until her throat ached. then hummed a lullaby the orphanage matron had sung on stormy nights when thunder frightened smaller children. The tune floated like jasmine on midnight air. By the second night, Zara's eyelids fluttered halfway through the chapter. Mira tucked the blanket around Tiny's shoulders and tiptoed out, heart thundering with a hope she dared not voice. On the third night, as Mira closed the book, she found Tund standing in the doorway, arms folded, expression unreadable. She froze, certain she'd overstepped again. But he said nothing, only watched Zara breathing evenly, a faint blush of color warming her cheeks for the first time in months. Mira whispered, "Good night, sir," and slipped past him. Down the hallway she waited, back pressed to the wall, pulse racing. Tund remained in that doorway a long time before finally shutting off the light. Something had shifted, like a locked window nudged open just enough to let new air in. For the first time since she arrived, Mira dared imagine she might belong in this house of broken hearts. Rain rattled rooftops the next afternoon, trapping everyone inside. Zara sat cross-legged on the carpet while Mira mended her teddy's button-eye with thread pilfered from the laundry. To fill the hush, Mira began telling her own story, the one she usually kept folded away like a shameful letter. She spoke of a mother who disappeared when she was 2, of strangers' homes where kindness was rationed like salt, of nights she lay awake counting cracks in the ceiling to distract from hunger. "But I kept moving," Mira said softly, "because I believed somewhere there was a place I'd be wanted." Tears slipped unbidden, she didn't wipe them. Zara's gaze lifted for the first time, locking onto Myra's. Tiny brows knitted as though the child recognized a sorrow akin to her own. Then, so quietly Mira thought she'd imagined it, Zara whispered, "Sorry." The word was rough, as though dragged across disused vocal cords. Myra's breath caught. She reached out but stopped short, letting the space between them hum with fragile miracle. From the doorway, a housekeeper gasped and hurried down the hall, news traveling on hushed wings. Mira dared not speak, afraid to frighten the moment away. Zara leaned forward, placed the newly mended teddy in Myra's lap, and for 3 full seconds their palms touched, small, soft, trusting. When Tund appeared minutes later, Mira rose to meet him, eyes shining. She didn't need to say a word. The hope blooming in that room was loud enough to shake the dust from chandeliers. Word of Zara's whisper spread faster than harmattan fire. Tund hovered outside his daughter's door, afraid to enter and burst the delicate bubble. At dinner he sat across from Zara and Mira, the long table still mostly empty but somehow less hollow. Mira spooned jollof rice. Zara ate 3 bites before pushing the plate away. Tund's throat tightened with gratitude too sharp for speech. Afterward he found Mira stacking dishes in the butler's pantry. "Thank you," he said, voice hoarse from disuse. She turned, eyes widening. It was the first gentle syllable he'd offered her. "For staying," he added. Mira nodded, cheeks warming beneath flickering sconce light. For weeks small miracles multiplied, Zara humming fragments of the lullaby while drawing crayon hearts, Tund emerging from Amara's closet wearing pressed clothes, sunlight once again daring to spill across polished floors. Yet grief is a stubborn tenant. One evening Tund caught Mira sharing whispered jokes with Zara in Amara's favorite reading nook. The laugh that escaped Zara's lips rang like wind chimes, shattering Tund's composure. He backed away, guilt-twisting. How dare joy live where Amara no longer could? That night he wandered the empty pool deck, wrestling memories until dawn painted the sky pink. In the quiet he realized joy wasn't betrayal, it was survival. If Amara's love had been a song, Mira and Zara were learning the harmony. He returned inside, determined to add his voice, however unsure, to their fragile chorus. Saturday morning sunshine spilled through French doors into the overgrown garden. Mira coaxed Zara outside, scissors in hand to rescue roses choked by weeds. Zara giggled when a butterfly landed on her wrist, the sound bright enough to make birds pause mid-chirp. Tund watched from his study window, paperwork forgotten. Mira taught Zara how to weave a daisy chain. Zara crowned Mira queen and herself princess, teddy bear royal advisor. When thorns pricked Myra's thumb, Zara grabbed her own sleeve to blot the blood, tender instinct startling them both. Tund stepped onto the terrace, hands shoved into pockets, unsure whether to intrude. Zara waved. He joined them, kneeling beside a broken terracotta pot. Together they replanted herbs Amara once used in her soups, Myra's hands guiding Zara's while Tund fetched fresh soil. Laughter bubbled, tentative but true. An hour later Zara produced a drawing, 3 stick figures, Daddy, Zara, Mira, inside a red crayon heart, Amara sketched above as a smiling sun shining down. Tun's eyes stung. He whispered, "It's beautiful," and kissed Zara's forehead. Mira hovered, uncertain. Tun turned the drawing toward her. "She wants you in our story," he said. Myra's breath hitched. For the first time she allowed herself to imagine roots, deep, permanent, growing in the fertile ground of this once haunted place. That night, amid the scent of fresh-baked plantain bread, Zara tugged Mira into the library where Tun read ledgers. The girl climbed onto a stool, cleared her small throat, and declared, "Mira should marry my daddy." Silence ballooned, so pure you could almost hear the fireplace crackle in embarrassment. Myra's heart slammed against her ribs. "Zara," she began, but Tun's pen had already fallen from his fingers, clattering across mahogany. He looked at Mira, really looked, seeing the gentle strength that had carried his daughter back from wordless shadows. Heat rose to Myra's cheeks. Every orphanage rule about knowing your place flashed in her mind. "Sweetheart," Tun said carefully. "Marriages," Zara interrupted, pressing their hands together like puzzle pieces. "See, Daddy? They fit." Mira trembled, half laughter, half sob. Tun's gaze held hers, a question forming in his eyes, a terrifying, exhilarating question about second chances and whether love could sprout where grief once choked all living things. Mira pulled her hand away, unsure, whispering, "I should check the bread." She fled to the kitchen, heart ricocheting off her ribs, leaving Tund and Zara alone with the daring idea now fluttering through the mansion's corridors like a liberated sparrow. Behind her, she could almost feel Amara's sunbright smile warming the walls, urging them all toward a new dawn none of them yet knew how to name. Morning mist still curled over Lagos Lagoon when Tun's Jaguar glided through downtown traffic toward Adeyemi Global's glass tower, a building he once ruled like a sunlit throne. The board had summoned him back after 2 years' absence, and shame prickled his skin as mirrored doors swallowed him. Inside the conference suite, 12 directors sat stiff as statues. "We're hemorrhaging," barked Chief Financial Officer Rodomai, his tie a crimson slash. "Philanthropy delays, stock dips, disgruntled investors, your grief is now a liability." Tun forced steady breath. He'd expected reproach but not the venom when Rodomai slid a tabloid across the table. "Billionaire's maid warms his bed," insider claims. A grainy photo showed Mira pulling weeds beside Zara, but the headline dripped insinuation. "Emotional instability breeds poor judgment," Rodomai sneered. Tun's jaw clenched. "Mira saved my daughter's voice." A female director leaned forward. "Optics matter. Dismiss the help or risk everything your wife built with you." The name Amara throbbed like an old bruise. Tund pictured Zara laughing in the garden, Myra's shy smile bright as dawn. He rose, hands flat on mahogany. "The board can manage numbers. I manage my family." Gasps fluttered. He walked out before votes could be tallied. In the elevator mirror he saw a man split between worlds. The sterile empire above the clouds and the fragile sanctuary of a little girl's laughter. As doors parted on the lobby, he heard Rodomai's final volley echoing down the corridor. "Love won't rescue our share price." Stepping onto the street, Tund realized this fight was no longer about grief. It was about whether love could outmuscle power. He texted Mira. "We need to talk tonight, then swallowed the bitter taste of war brewing on 2 fronts. Corporate boardrooms and his own trembling heart. Back at the mansion, Mira folded sheets in the laundry when 2 housekeepers' whispers drifted through the steam. "She's clever, that orphan. Hooked the Oga through the child. Mark my words. She'll have her name on the will before Ramadan ends." Myra's throat tightened. They didn't know she heard, didn't know each syllable clawed her old wounds raw. She finished her work, then slipped to the kitchen garden where Grandma Ife was plucking bitter leaf. "Grandma," she began, voice brittle, "maybe Zara will be safer if I leave." Ife straightened, eyes ablaze. "Safer? Child, you are the safety." Mira winced. Ife's tone softened. "People sling mud when they fear losing control. Let them fear. Stand firm." Mira knelt, palms in soil. "I've never stood firm in my life, Mama." Ife cupped her cheek. "Then learn now. Courage isn't thunder, it's a candle that refuses to be blown out." Mira nodded, though fear still coiled like smoke in her lungs. She spent the afternoon rehearsing farewells in case Tund asked her to go, each practice goodbye shredding her heart thinner. At twilight, she climbed to the attic window, staring at city lights trembling like scattered jewels beyond the banana trees. Somewhere out there, a younger Mira once drifted, convinced love was a currency she could never afford. Downstairs, a door clicked. Tund had returned. Mira pressed her palm to the stair rail, willing courage to burn brighter than gossip. Whatever storm approached, she owed Zara her best fight. Dinner unfolded beneath crystal chandeliers, plates gleaming untouched. Tund's eyes flicked toward Zara, coloring at the far end of the table, then settled on Mira. Rodomai raised concerns about misinterpretation. He began, words scraping gravel. Mira braced. If my presence harms Zara, I'll leave tonight. Her voice calm, though her pulse thundered. Tund shook his head. You've given this house breath. He slid a slim velvet box across linen. Not a ring, inside lay a delicate mother-of-pearl locket engraved with a single word, believe. It was Amara's, he said, voice fraying. She believed in healing more than prophets. Myra's hand hovered over the gift like a hummingbird, yearning yet afraid. I can't accept your wife's. My wife's legacy is love, he interrupted gently. Wear it when Tao claws at you. Tears blurred Myra's sight. She fastened the locket, its cool weight settled against her heartbeat. Across the room, Zara watched, quiet joy blooming. Mira drew breath, ready to thank him, when glass shattered. A brick lay amid shards, note taped around it, gold-digging slut, get out before we drag you. Blood roared in Tund's ears. Security scrambled, Zara screamed, sound slicing the night. Mira scooped the child into her arms, locket glinting in broken glass. Police lights soon painted the driveway blue, but Myra's trembling arms around Zara were the only siren Tund heard. Some enemies, he realized, didn't hide behind boardroom doors. They crouched in the shadows outside, armed with hate. And hate had just crossed their gate. By morning, every gossip blog pulsed with the break-in, spinning narratives of jealous mistresses and billionaire recklessness. Rodomai convened an emergency board call, demanding optical damage control. Tund refused. Instead, he announced he'd host the annual Adeyemi Foundation Gala at the mansion in 1 week. A public declaration that Mira belonged. Rodomai scoffed, but investors loved spectacle. RSVPs flooded in. Mira spent days coordinating caterers, though trolls flooded her phone with threats. She blocked numbers, whispered lullabies louder. On gala night, chandeliers blazed. Jazz rippled through gardens reborn under fairy lights. Mira wore a simple teal gown borrowed from Ife's younger days. Zara, in matching ribbons, clung to her hand. Tund, tuxedo immaculate, greeted dignitaries and influencers, jaw tight but eyes softened by resolve. Mid-evening, Rodomai seized the microphone. Let's toast our host, he purred, then turned sly. And the special guest who's captured his attention. Gasps as spotlights pinned Mira like prey. Rodomai's smirk widened, ready to unleash scandal. Before he spoke, a small voice sliced the hush. Leave her alone. Zara stood center stage, trembling yet fierce. She's my best friend and my hero. Murmurs swelled. Tears welled in guests' eyes. Rodomai's grin faltered. Zara walked to Mira, took her hand, faced the crowd. Mommy Amara used to say love is louder than fear. Mira makes our house sing again. Applause erupted, sweeping like wildfire. Tund stepped up, placing a steady hand on Myra's back. Out of the mouths of babes, he said, voice ringing. Rodomai slunk off stage, face ash. Under the ovation, Myra's heart pounded. Not with humiliation but with wonder at a child who'd traded silence for courage to defend her. In that thunder of clapping hands, the bricks thrown at glass felt suddenly small. But storms don't die in a single clap of thunder. The next dawn, a viral expose hit feeds, Mira Alawunmi, Runaway Thief. It featured blurred CCTV of a teenage Mira pocketing painkillers from a pharmacy she once cleaned after hours, medicine she'd stolen for a feverish bunkmate. The headline omitted that detail. Online wolves howled. Sponsors balked. Rodomai demanded an immediate dismissal. In the mansion study, Mira stared at the footage, shame sluicing through old scars. It's true, she whispered. I was desperate. Tund's face hardened, not at her, but at a world that punished mercy. Tell them the full story, he urged. Mira shook her head. They won't care. Grandma Ife entered, carrying a faded orphanage file stamped *confidential. Asterisk inside was a letter from the pharmacy owner dropping charges upon learning Myra's motive. Truth lives here, Aoife said. Use it. Mira swallowed. Even truth may not matter to men who smell blood. Rodomai arrived with legal counsel and termination papers. Sign, or we cut the foundation's funding by half, he hissed. Tun stood, fists clenched. You blackmail me at my wife's memorial gala? Rodomai's smile was razor-thin. I protect shareholders. Mira stepped forward, signing the papers before Tund could blink. I won't let my past bankrupt Zara's future, she said, voice steady though her heart cracked. She handed the pen to Rodomai, chin high. Grandma Aoife exhaled a broken sob. Tun's protest died on his lips as Mira kissed Zara's head and whispered, Keep singing, little star. Then she walked out, unbowed but bleeding, with only a small suitcase and the locket hammering against her heart like a battle drum. The mansion wilted in her absence. Zara's words retreated to whispers. Tund drifted through rooms tasting echoes. Weeks stretched into months. Rodomai tightened fiscal reins, slashing charitable projects Amara once championed. Share prices rose, but the Adeyemi brand felt hollow as an empty drum. In August, paparazzi captured Tund alone at Amara's graveside. Newspaper headline: Empire King in freefall. Meanwhile, Mira returned to the orphanage's peeling walls, sharing bunk beds with squealing girls who thought her glamorous for having once worn a teal gown. She scrubbed floors by day, studied for her caretaker certification at night, and clutched the locket like a lifeline. Letters from Zara arrived weekly, crayon drawings and phonetic spellings of I miss you. Mira answered each with stories about brave queens and stargazing princes, slipping hope between every line. She never told Zara about the nightmares replaying Rodomai's sneer, the vicious DMs, the way gossip still nipped her heels on the street. At dusk she'd climb the orphanage roof, watching lights of Ikoyi blinking across the lagoon, imagining laughter in a house that had forgotten her name. Sometimes she dreamed Tun's Jaguar stopping at the gate, but mornings always broke those illusions like fragile glass. Yet in that humble refuge Mira found new purpose, teaching shy children to read, telling them, your voice is a key, never lose it. Each time a child sounded out a word, something inside her stitched itself stronger. Pain became thread, thread became tapestry. She still loved Tund, but she no longer needed rescue. She was becoming her own storm. 6 months after Myra's departure, Tund sat in a silent boardroom studying an anonymous envelope left on his desk. Inside, screenshots of Rodomai bribing a blogger to fabricate the theft story, plus wire transfers from shell companies siphoning money from Adeyemi Global's charity wing. Betrayal stung like acid, but rage sharpened Tund's grief into blade. He enlisted a forensic accountant piecing together Rodomai's scheme, drive Tund into scandal, rally the board to replace him, then privatize the philanthropy arm for profit. The evidence piled high enough to bury a skyscraper. Tund called an emergency shareholders meeting. In a packed auditorium, he played the incriminating video on a 20-foot screen, Rodomai's voice bragging, once Adeyemi's love struck over that maid, the empire is ours. Gasps echoed, cameras flashed. Rodomai tried to bolt but security pinned him. Tund addressed the crowd, voice clear. My late wife believed money without mercy is rot. Anyone who shares Rodomai's creed should follow him out. Applause thundered. The board ousted Rodomai, but Tund went further. He resigned as CEO, appointing a female COO known for community projects. Reporters swarmed him outside. Is this about the maid? Tund smiled, a calm the city hadn't seen in years. It's about love outliving greed. He slipped away before more questions could snag him. Jaguar engine growling like a promise. Destination: the orphanage on mainland where hope kept moving. The orphanage courtyard buzzed with evening lessons when Tund's car rolled in, kicking up red dust. Children shrieked, mistaking the sleek sedan for a movie star's ride. Mira emerged from the classroom, chalk dust on her palms, locket glinting. Their eyes locked, time folded. Tund knelt, not caring about dusty trousers. I came to return something you never stole. He held out a thick envelope. Legal exoneration proof, apology letters from newspapers, a deed transferring part ownership of Adeyemi Foundation to Mira Alawami Trust. Mira stepped back, stunned. I didn't ask for. I know, he said, voice husky. But justice that isn't public isn't justice at all. Tears blurred her vision. Children watched wide-eyed. And, he added, I came to see if the bravest woman I know would help me rebuild what greed tried to ruin. He gestured toward a blueprint, community literacy centers across Lagos, bearing Amara's name and Myra's architectural sketches Zara had found. Myra's chest rose with a breath that felt like sunrise. Yet fear flickered. Scandal will circle again, she warned. He smiled. Let them circle. We'll be the eye of the storm. She laughed, small, incredulous, and the children cheered though they didn't understand. Above them clouds parted, revealing a slice of evening star. Somewhere inside Myra's chest, the candle Ife spoke of flared into bonfire. They worked side by side for weeks, Mira designing cozy reading nooks, Tund securing permits, Zara helping paint murals. The first Amara Center opened in Ajagunal under a banner reading Love is Louder Than Fear. On Inauguration Day, Zara cut the ribbon, camera crews capturing her proud grin. Within, shelves brimmed with donated books. Children sprawled on beanbags, devouring stories. Mira read aloud The Girl Who Found the Moon, now repaired with bright new cover art. Mid-chapter she paused, spotting Rodamai lurking beyond security tape, wrists cuffed, press swarming his bowed head. A surge of satisfaction, not spite, warmed her. Justice lived here, in laughter echoing off freshly painted walls. That night, the trio strolled the lagoon boardwalk. Tund slowed near a street saxophonist, then dropped to one knee beneath fairy lights strung between palms. In his hand, a simple platinum ring flanked by two tiny sapphires. Myra's breath hitched. Tund, he cut in. I don't ask you to erase the past, only to write our next chapters together. Passers-by gasped, pulling out phones. Mira thought of headlines, bricks, gossip, but also of Zara's giggle, of classrooms bursting with hope. She knelt too, mirroring him. We'll write in permanent ink. Zara squealed, hugging them. Applause broke like gentle surf. Camera flashes popped, but this time the light felt warm, not invasive. Tund slipped the ring onto Myra's trembling finger. Somewhere nearby, Grandma Ife's prayer whispered with the wind. God, breathe into this house again. The air tasted of rain yet to fall, clean, promising. A month later, the newly blended family hosted a small dinner in the mansion's once somber dining hall. Walls now bore vibrant murals painted by children from the center. Sunflowers, constellations, words like believe and rise. Mira, in a simple jade dress, placed steaming bowls of egusi soup while Zara set name cards written in her flourishing handwriting. At the table sat journalists from outlets that had once smeared Mira, invited to witness the real story. Tund raised a glass. To love rebuilt from ruins. Cameras recorded, but this time no one felt staged. Mid-meal Zara tapped her glass. I wrote something. She unfolded a sheet, reading a poem about teddy bears, mothers found, and houses learning to laugh again. Tears flowed freely. Mira kissed Zara's cheek, thanking her with eyes brighter than chandeliers. After dessert, Tund led guests to the grand piano, tarp long removed. Mira sat at the keys, Zara pressed Tund's hand atop hers. Together they played a halting yet beautiful duet of Amara's favorite hymn. Notes rang through halls once hollow, now alive. Outside, gardeners relit lanterns along the drive where Mira had first arrived trembling. Paparazzi lenses waited beyond the gate, but inside the mansion no one cared. Here, in the circle of melody and shared heartbeat, scandal had no voice. When the final chord faded, Mira closed her eyes, felt the locket against her skin, the ring on her finger, Zara's small arms around her waist, and Tund's breath warm on her shoulder. She whispered into the hush, sometimes family is the song you never knew the lyrics to it. Until pain teaches you every line by heart. And the mansion at last exhaled. Not a sob, but a laugh soft as dawn breaking over the lagoon. The weeks that followed felt like sunrise stretched out over days. Contractors hammered new life into the mansion, while volunteers painted child-sized murals in the driveway for the televised wedding of the year. Social feeds exploded with skeptical takes. Asterisk from orphan to heiress. Fairy tale or PR stunt? Asterisk. Yet donations to the Amara centers tripled every time skeptics sneered. Mira oversaw budgets on a battered laptop, still saving every naira receipt like the girl who once counted coins in a market stall. Tund juggled government permits, refusing to hide their love behind private gates. They chose an open-air ceremony on the mansion lawn, inviting the children of every orphanage in Lagos. Zara designed the invitations herself, glitter pens spelling "Please come watch love win." Still, menace lurked. Anonymous emails threatened chaos. One message read, "Money can't buy a new reputation when we burn the old one to ash." Tund funneled funds into security, but fear pressed on Mira at night like a weight. She prayed with Grandma Ife in the kitchen, 2 generations of women gripping hands over simmering pepper soup. "Fear is a story," Ife reminded her. "You get to choose the ending." Mira nodded, cheeks damp with quiet tears, and together they decided their ending would not be written by cowards hiding behind screens. Wedding morning dawned under angry clouds. Gusts rattled silk canopies, catering vans skidded through mud. At 9 a.m. sharp the mansion's power died, plunging crystal halls into darkness. Security scrambled, suspecting sabotage. In Zara's room, candles flickered around a dress of ivory lace borrowed from Ife's own wedding trunk. Mira stared into a powerless mirror, steadying her breath. Suddenly the door burst open, Zara, eyes wide. "They say we have to move everything inside, but the ballroom still smells like sadness." Mira sank to her knees, smoothing Zara's curls. "Where would you feel safe?" "By Mama's garden," Zara whispered, meaning the roses they'd replanted for Amara. Outside, technicians yanked scorched cables, somebody had sliced them clean. Rain began to spit, but the child's plea felt larger than weather. Tund rushed in, bow tie askew, fury in his eyes until Mira placed a hand on his chest. "Amara loved rain," she reminded him. "Let's marry under her sky." He exhaled, anger dissolving. Staff hauled pews to the rose garden, volunteers strung fresh lanterns powered by generators humming like giant bees. Guests arrived in plastic ponchos, laughter battling thunder. Journalists whispered about disaster until Zara marched down the aisle first, teddy bear clutched like a scepter, declaring to every camera, "We will not be silent today." A roar of applause met lightning's crack, and even the storm seemed to pause to listen. Half hidden behind a cypress, a gaunt figure watched Chitty, a former orphanage teen Mira once called brother. Rodamai had paid him to disrupt the ceremony, promising cash and a visa if he delivered chaos live on air. Now he clutched a smoke canister, thumb trembling on the pin as violins began the processional. Mira stepped into view, veil fluttering, and Chitty's memory flashed to nights she'd shared her bread roll so he wouldn't sleep hungry. His heartbeat hammered like a drum. On stage, the minister spoke of love forged in fire. Chitty's hand shook harder. Myra's gaze swept the crowd, landing on him, recognition flaring in her eyes. She didn't flinch, she simply mouthed, "You have a choice." Rain drummed. Chitty released the canister, not into the crowd but into the mud at his feet. Purple smoke hissed harmlessly into open air. Security pounced, but Tund signaled them back, then stepped off the platform, rain soaking his tuxedo, and offered Chitty a hand. Cameras zoomed. The billionaire's voice carried, "No one here is disposable." Tears cut tracks through Chitty's sooty cheeks as he surrendered the second device. On social feeds, the scene clipped viral within minutes. Love diffuses hate at billionaire wedding. Across oceans, strangers wipe tears they couldn't explain. Under gray heavens, Tund and Mira returned to the rose-lined aisle, thunder gentling to a soft, approving rumble. Vows unfolded beneath umbrellas held by giggling children. Instead of rehearsed prose, Mira spoke straight from the ache that had shaped her life. "I was born believing I had to steal love," she said, fingers brushing the locket at her throat. "You and Zara proved I only had to speak it." Tund's voice cracked as he replied, "Your hope rebuilt what grief tried to bury." They exchanged rings. Hers a delicate band matching the locket pearls. His forged from melted gold cufflinks Amara had once gifted. As the minister pronounced them husband and wife, clouds tore open to reveal a slice of blue sky, sunlight igniting raindrops into dancing prisms. Children released paper boats into puddles, each stamped with a dream for the future. Grandma Ife led a ululation so fierce it startled doves from the cypresses. Even the mansion's weather-worn statues seemed to lean in, eager to witness a house that had learned, at last, to laugh again. The reception spilled across lawns glittering with pooled water. Zara insisted on the first dance, her small feet atop Tun's shoes while Mira laughed through happy tears. When reporters asked for a statement, Mira simply pointed to the soaked children chasing rainbow reflections and said, "There is your headline." At twilight, a breaking news alert lit every guest's phone. Rodamai Agbage sentenced to 15 years for corporate fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. The crowd erupted in cheers as fireworks, already planned to celebrate the wedding, ignited over the lagoon in perfect synchrony with justice served. Tund raised a glass of palm wine toward the horizon. "Karma keeps good time," he mused, and guests clinked crystal in agreement. Sponsors who once threatened withdrawal begged for fresh collaborations, but Tund redirected them. "Invest in the literacy centers first. We'll talk profits later." Amid the applause, Mira slipped away to the quiet of Amara's garden. Petals glistened under firework light. She knelt, whispering gratitude to the woman whose love still pulsed through every corridor. Behind her, Zara arrived carrying a sealed envelope labeled "For the woman who makes them smile again." It was a letter Amara had written during her pregnancy, tucked into a keepsake box only now discovered. Mira unfolded the pages, tears blurring elegant script. Amara wrote of her deepest hope that if anything ever happened, someone gentle and brave would guide Tund and their child back to laughter. By the final line, "Love is a relay when you cannot run, pass the baton." Mira sobbed openly, Zara's arms wrapped tight around her waist, Tund's hand warm on her shoulder, 3 hearts linked across time. 1 year later, the 4th Amara Center opened in Kano, and this time Zara delivered the keynote. Standing on a wooden crate so she could reach the microphone, she told hundreds of children, "A tiny voice can build a loud world." The audience roared. International news outlets aired the speech globally, dubbing Zara the girl who taught silence to sing. Back home, the mansion's East Wing buzzed with renovation sounds. It would host visiting orphans during school holidays. Mira, now CEO of the Foundation, met weekly with grassroots educators, her once dusty sneakers replaced by modest heels that still felt strange on polished floors. Tund balanced board obligations with parent-teacher meetings, often arriving in a bespoke suit splattered with finger paint. Gossip pages occasionally rehashed the maid-to-matriarch storyline, but public sentiment had shifted. People saw more profit in hope than scandal. On quiet evenings, the family would picnic on the lawn, fireflies blinking like living fairy lights while Zara read aloud from freshly published children's books bearing Myra's name. Every time she stumbled over a word, Tund would correct her gently and Mira would place a reassuring hand on his knee, each touch a reminder that healing is not a destination but a daily practice. In early spring, the United Nations invited the Adeyemi family to New York for a summit on global literacy. The flight was Zara's first time above clouds. She squealed when sunlight burst through, washing the cabin in gold. At the podium inside the General Assembly, she presented her ragged teddy bear, stitched and restitched but still smiling. "This bear kept my words safe until I was brave enough to share them," she said. "Every child deserves a safe place to keep their words." Delegates wiped tears. Mira unveiled a blueprint for mobile libraries, solar-powered buses filled with books, music, and digital tablets. When applause thundered, Tund whispered to his wife, "See, your candle set the world on fire." She squeezed his hand, eyes shining. On the flight home, they mapped routes across West Africa, Zara doodling stars over every city name. Somewhere over the Atlantic, she fell asleep leaning against Mira, Teddy tucked beside her. Tund watched the 2 most important people in his life breathing in time, a quiet symphony 30,000 feet above the past. Back in Lagos, builders renovating a forgotten wine cellar unearthed an old camcorder. Amara's, labeled Family Dreams. That evening, the trio gathered in the cinema room. The screen flickered to life. Amara, pregnant, glow radiant, interviewing Tund about future plans. "If I'm not around," she laughed, "promise me you'll fill this house with more stories than silence." Then she turned the lens on herself. And if our little girl ever loses her voice, remind her that quiet is just the space where hope grows louder. The recording ended with Amara blowing a kiss. Mira pressed a hand to her heart. Zara crawled into her lap. Tund whispered, she passed the baton, and hit rewind, letting Amara's voice fill the room again, softer, sweeter each time, weaving past into present until grief and gratitude became a single thread. By the second anniversary of the wedding, breakfast chatter echoed through a kitchen once abandoned. Zara poured syrup on pancakes shaped like books while Mira cradled a sleepy newborn. Amara Ife Adeyemi, named to bind yesterday and tomorrow. Grandma Ife cooed over her namesake, declaring the circle complete. Tund flipped another pancake, apron smeared in batter. Remember when silence was our loudest sound? He joked. They all laughed, newborn gurgling as though she understood the punchline. Later, Zara dashed off to school clutching a speech for her debate club about courage. Mira watched her go, eyes bright with pride. She kissed the baby's forehead and whispered a promise to teach her every lullaby that once healed a broken little girl. Outside, gardeners planted new rose bushes beside the old, roots intertwining beneath soil rich with history. Proof that with tenderness, even broken ground can bloom twice. As dusk settled over Ikoyi, the mansion's windows glowed amber, music drifting across the lagoon. Inside, family and friends gathered for a story night broadcast live to every Amara center. Mira sat before the camera, newborn nestled at her breast, Zara perched beside her. Tund dimmed the lights and pressed record. Mira began, voice calm and steady. Once upon a rainy night, silence moved into a house and tried to stay forever. But hope kept knocking. She spun their tale in simple words, each sentence a seed of resilience planted in hearts listening near and far. When she finished, Zara added the closing line she'd practiced. Sometimes family isn't who shares your blood, but who shares your broken pieces and stays to help glue them back together. Applause crackled through speakers from Kano to New York. Mira closed the laptop, leaned into Tund's embrace, and listened to newborn Amara's soft coo, the sound of a future already finding its voice. Outside, the lagoon reflected 1,000 city lights, each one a reminder that darkness is never final while even a single candle chooses to burn because love, once awake, refuses to fall silent again. If you watched this far, please kindly subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment your thoughts below. Your support would really help us grow. Thank you and see you in the next one if you subscribed.